Very good morning. The Telegraph continue to reveal more WhatsApp messages from the former Health Secretary Matt Hancock. He fought very hard to close schools during the pandemic. Gavin Williamson, the then Education Secretary, was pushing back to keep them open. We are learning a huge amount about what was going on during the COVID pandemic. Another issue on this subject is about the journalist who leaked the messages. Isabel Oakeshott, was she right to do this? Well, joining me now is Tom Harwood and also lawyer Andrew Eborn. Right, Tom, anything happened since I spoke to you earlier? Is this moving on? There must be a lot of head-scratching going on behind the scenes now. I bet Matt Hancock's got his PR team working very hard to work out how to handle this next. Well,
of course, we had a statement from Matt Hancock a little bit earlier this morning where Matt Hancock was really pushing back against some of these claims that have been made by Isabel Oakeshott, who appeared on the radio this morning to say that a threatening message had been sent to her by Matt Hancock in the early hours of the morning yesterday, sort of as this story was breaking. He pushed back against that, saying, no, it wasn't a threatening message. It was a frustrated message because, of course, he felt that she had broken his confidence, that non-disclosure agreement that had been signed and then broken. But I think the biggest point that will be going on today throughout this morning and afternoon will be all of those people who know that they've texted Matt Hancock over the course of the last 2-3 years.
Are you one of them, Tom?
Thinking,
I bet you are, aren't you?
I am fairly confident that I will not be involved in this. Now, if Matt Hancock's special advisors had their phones leaked, I would be worried. But no, I think I'm in the clear.
Isabel Oakeshott. No, I mean, look, we're joking about it, but there are some serious revelations coming out. But also, Andrew Eborn, I'm fascinated to know, where does Isabel stand here on a legal point of view?
It's really fascinating. I could hear the whooping coming from your home all the way in Regent's Park yesterday as it broke. What I quite like as well is Matt in the cartoon today, always brilliant. He was sort of saying, wonderful cartoon, it's terrifying how easily WhatsApp messages can pass from person to person. He's brilliant, Matt. The legal position is this, and it's very, very important. There's two issues here. One, as Tom rightly said, there's an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, which Isabel signed. And when she was working with Matt on the book, the idea was certain information was passed in confidence. What that gives, whatever the rights and wrongs about the content, what it gives is Matt the right to sue her for damages for the loss that he's suffered. It's breach of that particular contract. He could also get an injunction. I'd be surprised if more injunctions, lawyers busying themselves behind the scenes as we speak to stop this relevant disclosure. But also, in addition to the breach of contract, the NDA, there's copyright law. Now, you might remember Meghan Markle against Associated Newspapers yet again. It was to do with the publication of her letter to her father. Now, there were two aspects to that. One was about privacy, and they gave her £1, and all the newspapers concentrated on that bit. The biggest bit where she got substantial damages settled was the copyright infringement. And as the writer of certain works, you get copyright, which means you can prevent the unauthorised disclosure and reproduction of those works.
So, but you wouldn't have copyright over your WhatsApp messages, would you?
You do, absolutely. Everything you write, you get.
Really?
And I always tell people, history repeats itself, and the reason it repeats itself is because people don't learn the lessons from history. Everything you write, everything you say will get disclosed to people you don't want to be disclosed to, but you do have rights. You have copyright in anything that you write in a recorded form.
I mean, look, the Telegraph are obviously incredibly proud of this. The Telegraph were also, of course, the newspaper that released the expenses scandal information 10 years ago, something like that, Tom. You were at primary school. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. But they are very keen to point out the lockdown files reporting team, and they have a big, long list of journalist names on the bylines on this article. The Telegraph obviously will have had this scrutinised by their legal team. They must feel safe publishing this.
People Associated Newspapers are in court all the time on that subject. It doesn't get you around the law. The law is very simple, but it has to be, for copyright, it has to be a substantial reproduction of the same. If you just reproduce what happened behind the scenes, it's different. But the breach of the NDA, I'll be very interested to see what Matt does with this. But also, we just spoke about a couple of days ago on this glorious, wonderful show, we talked about the launch of Green Hazel, his production company, which he's hoping will generate millions for him. If there's damage as a result, he could claim for the loss of earnings and all sorts of things. He could come up with an interesting claim. It's an interesting move, which Matt will now take.
Ultimately, this might be a wise commercial decision from the Telegraph. They might have calculated we're going to take a certain amount of hit, but my gosh, are we going to sell a lot of newspapers?
Absolutely.
You're right, absolutely. Let me just ask you, Tom, whether this is a good or bad thing for Richard Tice and the Reform Party. For anybody who doesn't know, Richard Tice, the leader of the Reform Party, is, I always want to say married to Isabel Oakeshott, but to all intents and purposes, they're in a very serious long-term relationship. A lot of people are saying what Isabel has done here is to give Reform that little push towards the next election, because Richard is cast as an arbiter of truth and honesty and transparency in opposition to the Conservatives. Will it play out like that?
I think it's really interesting with Reform because it doesn't have the same recognition name-wise that sort of the UKIPs of the past, or certainly the Brexit Party, did. With Reform UK, because it sort of evolved from the Brexit Party, rebranded, changed its name, in most focus groups and in most polls, people aren't quite sure what it is. It hasn't had that penetration beyond the kind of people that spend their lives watching the news or perhaps have Twitter accounts. We can't forget that most of the country don't. And that's the big hurdle that they've had so far. There have been some polls that have put them ahead of the Green Party. There have been lots of polls, actually, recently that have got them probably the Green Party catching up with the Liberal Democrats. Some polls put them on 6-7%, which is certainly an increase from where they were a year ago. But to be considered that sort of major force that would have a positive knock-on effect from a big story, I don't think that they're quite there yet. Because, of course, in these stories that everyone across the country will have heard about, that Matt Hancock had his messages leaked, I'm not sure that from that would flow, and the person who leaked them is in a relationship with the guy that leads a party that I've never heard of.
Yes,
it might be a bit of a leap of faith there.
It is a bit tangential, isn't it? But interesting if they're playing the long game. A lot of people will know who the Reform Party are today that didn't know who they were yesterday.